Aloha mai kākou. I am Kawaikapu Hewett Hewett. We are here at Windward Community College, here at the Paliku Theater. First and foremost, I want to say mahalo. Mahalo to the administration, the staff, here at Windward Community College and here at the Paliku Theater for allowing us to be here today for Ke Ao o ka Mālamalama o ka Hula, the Enlightenment of the Hula. We are here today to discuss hula history, mo'o olelo hula, hula traditions, loina hula, hula genealogies, mo'o kuauhau hula, hula legacies, ho'oilina hula, hula lineages, ewe hula, and familial lineages, ohana hula. We are here today to kuka with hula memories and hula recollections. I have this book, and I love this book, Nana Ina Lo'ea Hula, a book that was authored by Mr. Wendell Silva. First, I'd like to mahalo Mr. Wendell Silva for allowing me to be a part of this book. I'd like to read to you a message from Mr. Wendell Silva when I received this book. To brother, keep up your wonderful work in perpetuating our beautiful Hawaiian culture and heritage. Me ke aloha pumehana, Wendell Silva. I would also like to share with you the dedication page from the book that says, Ua ho'ola'a mākou I ke ia puke I nā kūpuna a me nā mea loea o ka hula o kākou o Hawaiʻi nei, that we want to dedicate this book to the kupuna and to our hula resource people. I would like to share with you another picture from the book. And this is a picture of a renowned Kumu Hula, Maiki Aiu. The young girl sitting next to her is her daughter, Coline Kaualoku Aiu. Today, at Ke Ao o ka Mālamalama o ka Hula, we have with us Coline Kaualoku Aiu. Let's talk. Let's kuka about hula. What I'd like to do is open the conversation with an olelo no'eau, a wise saying, that has very special connection to hula tradition. A ole pau ka ike I loko o ka halau ho'okahi. So literally it says, knowledge does not end within one structure or one school. Would you like to expound your translation, your meaning, your connection to this olelo no'eau?
Well, I'm honored that I've been asked this question, because when you think of hula, it never ends. It never ends. And so there's always a new beginning, a resurgence of the old. And when you say that it doesn't only end in one place, it certainly doesn't only begin in one place. There's a wellspring of knowledge, and like all waters, it flows evenly, continuously, and without restriction. And I think when we talk about hula and the misunderstanding of that olelo no'eau, people believe that it only goes down one stream and it enters the ocean on one path. And our hula is certainly not that way. It intermingles with all the different styles, all the different kupuna, and we all go back to a mainspring, which is Keakua. So when Keakua gives us inspiration, and Keakua excites us to demonstrate his beauties, then the wellspring keeps filling. And it allows us then to acknowledge him in all we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and feel. And that definition of hula comes from my mother. And that is how we understand hula in our halau to be.
You know, we just looked at this wonderful picture, and you are sitting here with your mother.
Yes.
And this picture speaks 1,000 words. And I feel this way because when I look at this picture, and I look at you, and you're there with your mother, okay? So we grow up, and we become our parents.
That is true.
You are the embodiment of Halau Hula O Maiki through your mother.
I agree with that. As far as sewing and those other aspects of my mother's talents, I may fall a little short of that.
So talk about that, because when I see you, I see your mother.
Well, thank you. You are so
I do.
cute.
Cousin.
Well, you know, in the photo, and when you look at it in the old book, my mother called me and said, I want you to stop by the house before you go home. And I said, sure. I said, did you want lunch or something? And she said, no, just come. So when I arrived, there was a blue mu'umu'u out for me, which I still have. And there was a halau maile, or a banyan leaf lei, which my mother kind of developed as her lei. And there was a huge lei po'o. And in the photo, you will see it's made out of hibiscus. And I thought to myself, you must be kidding. But she said, babe, and I said, yes. And she said, well, just go and change it. And I said, okay. So I went, you know, and she had my slip out there too, you know, because of Catholic school upbringing, there are always undergarments to be worn. So I changed into my slip and I put on my blue mu'umu'u, and then I put on the halau maile, that's what we call it. And then I said, okay, I think I'm ready. What are we doing? And she said, well, you need to put on the lei po'o. And I said, well, do you think it'll fit? And she said, oh, of course it will. I thought, it looks rather large, but I put it on, and she said to me, perfect. And I said, what are we doing, Mom? She said, well, in a few minutes, a young gentleman will come, and he will take our photo together. And I said, okay. Well, I said like this, Mom, you know what, it'd be really good if like you sat here and I sat down by your feet, and I did something like, and she said, no. I said, because, you know, wouldn't that be good? She said, well, it's for a hula book that they've written, and the young man is coming. So I said, okay. And then he comes and he sets up his camera, and he said, you know, I would like you to be here. And she says, okay. And then, so I feel, since she told me not to sit on the floor, maybe I should sit next to her. So as I'm going to sit there, she puts her hand out, and she goes, and I said, I looked, there's no chair behind there. So I said, oh, did you want me to stand? And she said, no, I want you to sit right here at the back of the chair. So I said, well, it's your photo, Mom, whatever you want. And that is how we took the picture.
But your mom had a purpose for that, right? You know that because there was intent in all of that.
Yeah. Well, you know, at first, I think when I did the photo, first of all, I was only like about 33. And you know, when you're 33, you know everything. So you don't have to learn anything because you know everything.
And nothing but everything.
But everything. And we mean everything underscored. We don't mean just a little bit. We mean everything. So when you're 33, you know, okay, so there you have it. So I'm 33, and I think, well, I know everything, but I didn't know, because in a few months, my mother, Auntie Maiki, and I refer to her as that, passed away, and then I was given the halau. And I don't mean halau as in uppercase. I mean halau, underscored with kuleana, with responsibilities that you cannot even imagine. Now, I was 33 years old. I'm thinking, I can do it. And I didn't understand all of the unspoken imagery, all of the unspoken expectations. And much later, I think it was maybe in 1992, Auntie Sarah Ka'ilikea explained to me the photo. And by then, I was older and I was getting it.
Because you did it and you're still doing it. So tell us about that.
Well, it's like you and like all of the Kumu Hula. You don't get it and sit on it. You receive it, and you have to receive it. If you're just going to take it, it's not going to survive. So I received it in its unspoken wrapping of responsibility, dedication, truthfulness, and quietness. It wasn't something that you were going to take now and mauae everybody else to move forward, because there was no sense, or I didn't have a sense of what they call legacy, lineage. I really had no sense of that. I was a dancer with Zulu, and if you can imagine, night clubbing in the 70s in Waikiki was very different from hula as you know it today. And the whole expectation of culture was very different. We came from the culture that everything in your house looked like it was part of the museum. And you thought people's homes were just like that until you spent the weekend. And then you were like, oh, they don't have dried lace hanging on their pictures, and they have few pictures, and they don't have ipus and drums and spears and capes and more photos all over in their house. So it was a whole different kind of understanding, and you know that, because we come from families who didn't teach it, they lived it. So they didn't teach you like, I'm going to teach you. It was, we're going to clean, we're going to sort the costumes, come, we need everybody, let's do this. It wasn't, come, may I teach you how to do this.
Exactly.
It was, that is what your family does.
Right.
And don't say, you don't know how to sing, you go and sing for Auntie, it's Auntie's birthday. And don't tell us you don't know how to dance, you go over there. Auntie asks you, go over there. And don't be looking at us, go over there. So you were brought up with it, and that is what you did. And you did it well, and you did it respectfully, because you were trained at the Catholic school. All of our parents, well, mine, and I think the others too, were devout Catholics. And the fundraising programs, you know very well, your family did all of them. You counted on the Catholic Hawaiians who had culture, and who knew how to cook the Hawaiian foods, and who knew how to decorate. So all the Hawaiian families were a part of that, and you learned to be respectful to authority. And you learn to understand that there's one po'o and many ave. And the ave doesn't try to become the po'o when the po'o is there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you know how that is.
When I think of your mom, so the word kulana hie hie, just this elegance about her in everything that she did. And when I would watch her performances and get up there and talk about the mele and explain, there was always elegance attached to her. So I think of this kulana hie hie with Auntie Maiki. Now, I see the same thing in you when you present yourself.
Oh, thank you.
What I would like you to do is talk about your hula training and your experiences in hula, and maybe a little bit about the family hula genealogy, the mo'okuauhau.
Okay, well, I didn't, I'm going to say this. I didn't come out dancing hula. And I did not uniki when I was 3. And I did not have hula training every single day with my kupuna. I didn't. I did ballet and I did tennis and I did jazz and other things, but I was always around the halau, just like you. We're always around. And because you see it all and you know deep down in your heart, this is something that requires attention. It is not something you can just do and come in. It requires attention. So during the summer, my mother would be very busy on Kemoku Street, and I would go and help her sweep and mop. And then we would go across to H&M Diner, and I would get to order a hamburger deluxe with Helen and May, those were the owners, and a custard pie with whipped cream. Now, this is summers items. You know, I'd say, Mom, don't worry. I'll sweep and mop after you take a little rest. Or she was performing at that time as the MC at the Royal Hawaiians Luau. She was dancing at Nakupuna Night over at the Moana. She was up at Paradise Park. And so I would say to her, Mom, I will go and get your flowers for you and just pick whatever you want to wear and I'll do the flowers. So down the street at Pacific Heights, there were plumerias, hibiscuses, there were all kinds of flowers. So at that time, my mother received a check from the Sheraton for $18.05 for every Sunday. And what she would do is she would give it to me because I was helping with wardrobe. So that was my training. You know, I'd iron her holoku and she'd say, when you iron it, you know, iron it this way. It's like ironing shirts, you know, you do the inside. And then she'd say, which colors would look nice with it? And she'd always say, well, whatever you pick, babe, I'll wear. And I made sure like it was like beautiful and I'd set it all up and she'd say, okay, now what we have to do is pack them. And she'd always say, now remember, you have a holoku and you must have the right shoes. And I'd say to her, don't you think that holoku looks a little short on you? And she said, no, because she had these little tie slippers with little squared heels and colored pointed toes. And she said, and what you do is you wrap it and put it in the garment bag. So I would do the shoes, I would do the holoku, and I would do the lace. So well, that's learning. You know, people think...
That's right,
well,
that's training. You're in training.
Yeah, you don't go and watch somebody's video and go like, okay, I think I will do that.
Yeah.
And you know, my mother, Auntie Maiki, and I like to refer to her as that, is because even though as my mother, she's mine, she really is everybody's Auntie Maiki, because she did things joyfully, and she'd always say, take your best. Don't save your best, take your best. If somebody asks you to do something, take your best. And they may not be the wealthiest, they may not be the most important, but take your best. And so the hula legacy is that, you know, in training, like you with your own mo'opuna, as you prepare for the show, and I was her typist. At the Halekulani show, she had a little Remington typewriter, a little portable, and I would put it on her makeup table stand, and while she was taking a shower, she had a sliding door, she would close it though. And then I would push it open a little bit, and I'd say, all right, Mom, I'm ready. And she'd tell me the show. And she'd say like this, make 2 on a card and 1 on a sheet of paper. 1 card is for me, 1 card is for Auntie Ida or Uncle Bill, who's ever playing the music. Yeah. And the 1 on the sheet is for the dressing room. So here I was typing, and she'd say, well, this is 2 minutes, 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, Oli is 30 seconds, whatever. And then she'd say, perfect. That's just enough that I need. So and I say, well, this one is so short this week.
That's discipline.
Oh, that is. That is.
So you went through this as ho'opili, actually being there in the presence of your mom, alongside with her. And this, unlike ho'a'o, which is a lesson or a class, this was your life.
Yes. And, you know, that's why our book is called Hula is Life. And I wanted to, on her passing, to write down the many, many things that she shared with people, so that generations later, they would know that these were her own spoken words, because she had wanted to be a race car driver. She did want to become a nurse. She wanted to be a stay-home parent, but unfortunately, all those things were a little bit extravagant. And in order to send us to Catholic schools, at that time, the tuition was like $35 and $75 a child. It was Father Gregory at Blessed Sacrament Church, who was from Belgium, who said to her, why don't you teach some culture in the hall? And maybe, you could earn a little bit money that way.
Yeah.
And that's how this whole evolution of Maiki Aiu and Hula O Maiki and Halau Hula O Maiki and the mother of the Hawaiian Renaissance came about because of a priest, a Belgian priest. And of course my father, fire chief. And you know how fire chiefs are. They're on 72 on and 72 off.
Right.
So my father was my mother's critic. He would go to the show and watch it and say, well, that number was very successful. Many people enjoyed it. And this one they didn't quite understand. And he would pick up the girls in our station wagon, our Plymouth station wagon. He'd pick them up and take them to the show and then return them home. And he would be with my mother making the tea leaf skirts.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
So, it wasn't just one person, as I said, a wellspring.
Yes.
And you and I, and many of our hula family, we all know that Keakua is the pai of everything.
That's right. That's
Today, many people don't like to say it because they feel if they do, now they have somehow not given respect to our kupuna. But all of our kupuna
Exactly.
were religious people.
Exactly.
Auntie Emma,
Yes.
everybody. And it was a time that you knew where the strength and energy came from, and you knew what you must do, because it's on those quiet moments like you where they are always talking to your heart. Like I'll be sweeping and mopping and I have some grand idea and I'm like, I know it's not me. I said, but thank you.
Do you recognize in your own hula, or when you're doing things around your home, in your mannerisms or the way you talk, that you are there with your mom?
Yes.
Always.
I have to tell you this. Okay, so one day I was cleaning the louvers. This was at Puck's Alley. So I had the bucket of, and at Puck's Alley there were louvers that went like 3/4 way around the place on the corner. So I'm cleaning the louvers because they're always getting dirty, and I'm making my hand go like this. And I look at my hand and I'm like, that is not my hand.
Yes.
That is my mother's hand. And then I oh, okay, then I cleaned them even better. I really wiped them down good. But there are moments, and everybody, every person, not buddy, every person who has committed their life to hula and committed their love to their kupuna, all experience that in some way.
Absolutely.
Others maybe more and can articulate it better, but we all do. And that's why when somebody says that, we all I, because it's not unique.
The connection.
It's not unique.
So since we're on mom, your mom, tell us a little bit about mom's hula genealogy and her training. What you know and what you understand, what you remember.
Okay. Well, when I was younger, I didn't understand the whole thing about why she had to fly to Kona because Mrs. Montgomery called. I could never get that. I'd be like, why is mom going to Kona? And who is Mrs. Montgomery? She was not lokalia to us, as many people assume and have those very familial ties. My mother's teacher was her teacher. And Auntie Maiki, my mother's teachers of other disciplines, were her teachers. They were not my aunties. At that time, we didn't do like, oh, this is Auntie so-and-so. It was not. It was, there is Mrs. Pukui, and I'm going to see Mrs. Montgomery. And I think the only uncle was Uncle Timmy Montgomery, Auntie Lokalia's husband. But there was, later on, Auntie Alice Namakelua.
Yes.
And of course, there was, okay, Auntie Vicky. But you know, when I saw Mrs. Montgomery, she was like Mrs. Montgomery. That was my mother's teacher. And when my mother studied, she wanted to go and learn. And she was like 13 or 14, and someone was taking, and they said, well, you know, do you want to come and study? We're studying from Mrs. Montgomery in Kapahulu. And she was like with her cousin, like, well, shall we go? Well, we better not go. Well, we should go anyway. Well, they went. So that's my Auntie Nana, and of course my mom. But my Auntie Nana and Auntie Sally Wood finished before my mother, but they were classmates, meaning they were in the same area. They were not in the same come sit over here class. They were in the same area at Charles Street. And so my mother wanted to graduate with them. She just desired with so much of her heart, because their class symbol was the Maile. And she wanted to be a Maile, her teacher, because Maile was popular and people loved it. And it was beautiful and green. And her teacher said no. And then she was devastated. But she loved the hula. She loved her teacher and respected her. The teacher said, you have to come back again. Now, she did not have $300 with 7 children, a husband who was a fireman, for that kind of money to spend at that time. We're talking in the 40s. But somehow, my father allowed her to go, and she did go. And when she graduated as EAEA. Now, the Maile, I've never been into the deep, deep forest, but people tell me this, that the Maile surrounds the EAEA, and you'll find them in that very close area.
Yes.
Well, then I became the Kumu Hula of the Halau when, of course, Auntie Maiki passed. And then I actually graduated my first Kumu Hula 25 years after she had passed. So she passed in 1984, and I unikied my first Kumu Hula in 2004. And it was my right to give this Kumu Hula my mother's symbol. And no one has ever had that symbol of EAEA, because it was unique for the symbolism of my mother's training and what she would do. And so now that that symbol is out, others have claimed it. And, you know, I feel happy that they love the symbol and its why. But that symbol belonged to my mother. It was hers. And like names, that is your property. And you can give it if it's given to you. So that was given to me, and then I gave it to my first Kumu Hula.
So you are given the symbol, the plant symbol of the EAEA, which tells me I want you to reflect on the uniki process.
Okay, so now my mother's symbol is the EAEA.
Okay.
My first graduate symbol is the EAEA.
Yes.
But my symbol is Lehua. So what it was, the first growth, you know, after a barren lava flow is the Lehua. And it struggles, and some grow very tall.
And
Some,
beautiful. Some
and
very
beautiful, and stately,
Yes.
and elegant, and wonderful.
Yes.
And others grow into shrubs
Yes,
that
yes,
are
yes.
just as lovely.
Yes,
but they
because
have,
I'm a lehua too.
I know, that's why I'm saying elegant, tall, and etc.
There we are, the two lehuas talking. Sorry, okay,
Yes.
go. Continue.
So that was Lehua, because it was the first formal uniki to take place since before Auntie Lokalia's them time. Formal in the sense that it didn't only belong within the family now. See, there's hula,
Right.
ohana,
Hula
and there's
ohana.
this halau system.
Yes.
And so now the halau system comes into play in 1971.
Okay, so you have an familial line, all of you, the ohana, and then you have halau, where the breath, the knowledge of the teaching, lau is disseminated out,
Exactly.
and now you have haumana, which are going to be students.
Yes.
Okay, now how did all that happen?
Okay, so as I told you, we had to go to Catholic school. It was important, you know. And so my mother, under Father Gregory's advice, started to charge for hula. And from her garage on Ahikolo Street, Pauoa people, you know that street, because Uncle Joe Kahaulililu lived in the valley growing taro, and his mother Lily did plumeria. So on Ahikolo Street, it was the last street before all the lo'i, she had a little house there, which still is there, and she taught hula in the garage. But then it got too crowded. So then Father Gregory said, come. And then from Blessed Sacrament Church, then we went, my mother, it was my father, because, you know, he's half Chinese. My father said, you must go to Wilder Avenue, because with the number of students you have, you will be able to pay for a space and still earn some money. So from Blessed Sacrament Church, off they went to not 99 Wilder, but Wilder and I think it's Liho, that little corner. There's a supermarket there now, upstairs on the second floor. And then the halau just kept growing because families who brought their children, now more of them came. And then she went to Ke'el Moku Street above the feed shop, and then the swimsuit shop, and then the trampoline shop. And even before Mālamalama Shopping Center was built, she was there, because you could see all the way to the beach. And Rainbow Rollerland was just about halfway down. So that's where she began. And that is the sign everybody remembers. The surfboard, my brother's surfboard, hanging on the wall. Well, now we don't want to say what it has become. But anyway, it was 937 Ke'el Moku Street. Now, what happened with my mother is that when she was studying hula, she was so excited. She was teaching her best friend, like to practice, but this was not what she was supposed to do. So when Auntie Localia found out, Mrs. Montgomery, she was not happy. And she said, Margaret, that's my mother's English name, Margaret. And the name, her school was Margaret Aiu's Hula Studio, on a pink sign hanging on the walkway up. She said, Margaret, you know, just not too many other words after that. But then my mother's friend now had to come to the class. It was not going to be through you to her. Right. It was going to be from me to her.
Exactly.
But she gained admittance because she was my mother's friend, and my mother, unbeknownst to her own enthusiasm and wanting to remember everything, was practicing with her friend.
Ah, I see.
And that friend is still alive. And sometimes she reminds me of that story. And I said, I know. She said, I always wondered why Mrs. Montgomery didn't care for me. And I thought, oh, well, that's probably why.
You went circumvent the process.
Yeah. So in 1971, after 25 years of teaching from her friend onward, she decided, my mother, Auntie Maiki, said, I'm going to retire, and I'm going to graduate these students, and mahalo.
So
and
how did she choose those students to graduate?
Her teacher said, that's wonderful, Maiki. That is excellent that you want to take on a larger responsibility. This is wonderful. But understand, when you retire, the moment you do, our acknowledgement of them is pau.
Then there's you.
Well, the thing is that I had to be in that group. Because then when my mother was pau, when she was uahala, then the halau could continue.
Exactly.
With blessings and with I think the love of the kupuna supporting it. And that's how, so in 1971, she began her uniki process. Now, it was only 2 years. 2 years of study. And they some of the students said, and I was dancing with I think Palani Vana no, maybe Zulu, I'm not even sure, 71 maybe, and the hula would be all night. So I could go before my show, and after my show was pow, I could go back. And they were still in class.
How many were in that class?
I would say to start off, there must have been about 48, 49.
That's amazing.
It is, because they were thirsty and hungry. And if you remember my mother, and I know you do, it didn't matter if you had 12 left feet, because those left feet could be corrected.
Yeah.
But what you had to have was an openness of heart and a willingness to learn and kindness, and you would survive the class.
So she opened her doors to people to come.
She had an ad in the newspaper.
And through the ad in the newspaper, a lot of these people came.
Of other people came, people who were not, they were familiar. They had seen her performances, they admired her work, but now they were given the chance to come into the halau, just come in. And they took that opportunity, and they did.
That is amazing. And how long, do you say 2 years, that process?
2 years. Now at that time, 2 years then was very different.
Yes.
Because you didn't have videos, and you didn't have, okay, you can just do this and film the class and I'll Zoom it to you. It was like, okay, and it was through storytelling. It was like, before they even got to the song, they were talking about kuhio and then you were talking about the words and then back to kuhio and then maybe we'll do a ki'ipa.
Wait, so tell me, were you an obedient student at that time?
I will say this. I learned as much as I could as a formal student in the Saturday and 4 o'clock classes. I was not a good student. I would often take my friend who was in that class with me to go surfing and say to her, we'll come back by 4, knowing that we weren't. I did take her, but we did, and I was a very good student in that I was attentive to my mother. I was attentive to my mother and the things that brought her joy, the things that made her so proud of being Hawaiian and having kupuna, because her mother passed away at a very young age and she was hanai'd out. So that kind of mothering by her teachers was tremendous for her.
Well, I am sure that there was a great deal of love and nurturing, because I am a parent, and when I watch my children, regardless of how kolohe and rascal they are, there is that connection, like with you and your mom, that is never, ever lost. It's always going to be there.
Well, I'm glad, because if somebody had asked me this at age 25, 28, 31, are you going to be just like your mother? I said, I don't think I can. And they'd be like, didn't you take hula from the time you were 3? I was like, no, I didn't. And so my getting back really into hula came about because I wanted to buy a new surfboard. And Surfboards Hawaii was down the street on Kapi'olani, and I'd always walk by, and there was a 9-foot 2-inch, 4-inch balsa strip with 1/4-inch redwood rate, and I thought, I can buy that. So they were looking for dancers at the Kaimana Beach Hotel.
And there we go.
For a new show called Na'opio Night. And it was like $10 every Thursday, and I went to the audition. And when I showed up, my mother was like, you're going to audition? I said, I can do it, Mom. So, I went in there and I did my a'oia, and I was like, yeah, I could do the whole hula hula ka'a, and I got the job.
Excellent.
And then from that, I got back into hula. I always knew it was something to be loved and revered, but I got back into it seeing my mother And as I told you, I knew the things that brought her joy,
Yeah.
brought her great pride. And she never said to me or anybody as her students, you ought to be kukanaka. You should be a Hawaiian. That was not it. She always said, these are the treasures that are ours, and you need to love them.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's like you with your children.
Absolutely.
And your grandchildren, you know.
And not a great-grandkids.
Not a great
They're popping out all over the place.
That's it.
So I want to ask you now about you, what you're doing now, today, with the Halau. Because the legacy is being carried on through the work that you're doing.
Well, that is what Halau Hula O Maiki is still doing. This year is our 75th anniversary. And Halau Hula O Maiki has survived through the different, I guess, wheels of hula. And we are doing those very same things. The descriptive hula is always part of the repertoire. There are basic songs to be learned. There are those moments of development and growth. You know, in the Halau, it was like this. As you were a young girl and you learned to be more refined in your hula, and your emotional life grew, then you could have a green holoku. And you didn't have to be size 3 or 4. Every woman could have a green holoku. And then you went to the white holoku. And then you had a red holoku. So these holoku were part of your wardrobe, performance wardrobe. And then as you refined your dancing and your sense of aloha in that aspect grew, you were given different other colors. So, you know, Halau Hula O Maiki is the same. We have the same green satin strap, side zipper, hula top. We've never had to reinvent ourselves because there was nothing to reinvent about my mother.
Especially when you have that pure tradition,
Yep.
that legacy. But you have something more because you are a familial tradition. You have a eve. You have a blood connection to that hula tradition.
Well, you know, it's like you. In the many people that you touch through hula, as all Kumu Hula do, they touch so many lives, and they bring those lives, they direct them to keakua in different ways. But the hula, there is always given within the family. You can have many, many students, many, many friends, but there will never be a time in the hula family that the hula po'o would just arbitrarily give it out to another family.
Yeah.
When they give responsibility to another family, they are always with the firm belief that that person will return that responsibility and rightful heir to that line. That
Absolutely.
you, outside of the line, you are gifted because you have been given this gift, but it is not for you. It is to be sure it's returned in. And that is something I learned. You know, my mother, her family genealogy, she had no idea really who was her great-grandparents, because she was hanai'd out. And she thought the people she was living in were her mother and father, and the lady who came to visit was the auntie. But the lady who visited was the mother, and this was the grand auntie and uncle. And when they died, she had a very real life lesson, because this wonderful pampered life she had in Palolo became a very difficult and hard life in Nanakuli.
Oh.
And I think that's why when people looked at her, and she always seemed to be so elegant, is because she never wanted hardship and to be the reason why you did something.
But yet that hardship built that great character within her. You know, and everything is not given to you on a silver platter. When you have to learn and earn all of that, it builds great character.
You know who said those exact words, and I'm going to grab your hand?
Who?
Auntie Sarah Ka'ilikea. When Auntie Maiki passed in 1984, I said to myself, who is going to love me enough in hula and in life? Who is going to love me enough to take care of me? because my mother loved me so much, she forgave everything. Everything, no matter what. She forgave it because she never counted it. So Auntie Sarah would say, you know, my dear, things are not given on a silver platter. And when you work for it, you will receive it. And she would say to me, call me in the morning, 5:30, what are you doing? And I'd be like, oh, I'm up. Is there something you need? Get rid of my sleepy voice. And she said, well, I'd like to see you today. I said, I'll be there. I can be on the 7 o'clock flight. I'll be there by 8:30. Get a rental car, pick her up, and spend the whole day with her. And she'd say, just like that, she'd say, there was an akaku, and that was a word I didn't know and had to look it up and learn it.
Yes.
And she said, they told me I needed to see you today. And she would not only say it once. Sometimes I'd say, Auntie Sarah, what do you think? I'd say, let's go eat Hawaiian plate. And we'd eat, and I'd ask her, try to kind of get her to give me the answer. And she'd say, my dear. Just like that. So sweet. And her eyes big. And behind her glasses with her little hat, with her dried ilima. My dear, you know, and she'd look up, you know, things are not given to you on a silver platter.
Exactly.
You must work for them. And then she'd look
Exactly.
back at me and she'd
Exactly.
just smile. So how did you know to say that? I know. I know.
Auntie Sarah Kailikea, with the little interaction we had, was a reminder for me of Auntie Iolani Luahine.
Oh,
They almost acted the same way. They
yeah.
almost had this spirituality that was so peely to them that when I met Auntie Sarah after Auntie Iolani, was like, am I looking at the same person?
Yes.
I mean, it was amazing.
You know, you knew Auntie Iolani very
Yes.
close. I didn't. All I knew was my mother's friend was at our house at Pacific Heights, and from my bedroom, like the second floor of our house, Nihipali, I could see the patio, and I could hear something. I didn't know what it was, and my father would come to our rooms and say, those are your mother's friends downstairs. And they would be dancing, chanting, laughing. And he'd say, go back to bed. There's school tomorrow. So I'd get back into my little four-poster bed, and I'd lay down, but I would hear like, ooh, ooh, and I'd think, what? But my father assured us, those are your mother's friends, and they're visiting your mother, and tomorrow there's school. So, Auntie Sarah, you're right. I didn't know Auntie Io. I did not. I met her maybe 3 or 4 times when I was younger. And there's a book she's with my mother, but she had no children. My mother had 7 children. She loved my mother, and there was a sisterhood there. I was not privy to that, but I do know on the night in August in 1973, when the graduates of Halau Hula O Maiki, the first class, had to do their public presentation at the NBC, from the upper balcony, you heard this wailing and chanting, and it seemed to move down the steps from the balcony, and the spotlight people were trying to find it, and it was Auntie Io, and she was chanting and calling to my mother as the students did their kahiko presentation for the public. So I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a gift because Auntie Sarah now became my mentor, like Auntie Emma was for you.
Yes, Auntie Emma.
So Auntie Sarah became for me, and she helped me to navigate all things that I didn't understand. And she'd always say this to me, you will know when there's ike hohonu, you will know it. Well, then I had to look up and make sure I understood the word hohonu. I was like, I know ike, but do I know hohonu? And then I did.
The
Now,
depth.
when Auntie Sarah passed, she was on Kauai, and she was going to be taken maybe to a care home. And I spoke to Malcolm and I said, say to her this, do you want to go to Kaualoku or do you want to stay on Kauai? She came to me because she had promised me she would be with me on my birthday.
Oh.
So this was in February, and she came to Kauai, and I arranged for her to have a room in my house in Kona. And she was there a week prior to my birthday and a week after, almost a little more than an anahulu. And she couldn't speak much because she was so fragile by then. And I'd say to her, same thing I said, so selfish of me, I'm so sorry. I said, who will love me enough and who will forgive me for all of my shortcomings and who will understand my heart? And she said to me, and I said, I was like trying to hint a name, and I was saying, oh, the person's a woman.
Mm.
The person's on Kauai.
Mm.
So then I had to rack in my mind who she mentioned on Kauai. And then she said to me, in my mind, I heard her remind me of Auntie Alitha Kaohi. And so after Auntie Sarah had passed, I telephoned, hello, may I please speak to Alitha Kaohi? She said, speaking. I said, hello, my name is Coline Aiu. And she said, yes. And I said, I'd like to meet with you and talk to you. So I said, would you like me to come to Kauai? And she said, oh no, I'll be in Honolulu in a week or two. And I said, all right. And I said, please call me. Of course, I was like, how do I say? Auntie Sarah said for me to call you. Well, I just said it. I just said it. When she came into the halau on Beretania Street, I said like this, I'm so happy you came, thank you. And along with her came her companion, Uncle Stanley. And I said, I know you because I know we are related because Tweety, which is her niece, and we spent lots of time together as youngsters. And her mother, Auntie Betty, and my mother, they always had this big Kauai connection, like some kind quiet they didn't want us to know. You know when you're always trying to listen and they're like, oh, go over here and talk. And so she knew of that relationship with Tweety and I. And then I said, I asked you to come because, Auntie Sarah has passed. And she said, yes. And I said, and Auntie Sarah told me that if I felt lost and I needed somebody to call you up.
There we go.
I mean, and she said, like Auntie Sarah.
But that was the old way. They never gave you a straight reply.
No.
You had to try and figure it out.
Exactly. What is it? It is never given to you on a silver
On a
platter.
silver
It would have been so much
platter.
easier.
Right. Never,
I would have grown up so much sooner.
Right.
I would have been even, a better reflection. But it's not on the silver platter.
Yep.
And so till this date, Puna, as I call her, Auntie Alitha Kaohi, has been my pai and my mirror in all those things that I do. She doesn't tell me what to do. I usually call and say, oh, ba, 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 ba. And she says, wonderful. And then she appears.
See, Auntie Aiu used to always say to me after a long story, oh, okay. And that was it.
Yeah.
Nothing more. The rest, you have to figure it out.
Well, that's why Kawaikapu now, when we come to this time, now, this year, in my mother's 75th celebration anniversary, I have just only become 70 years old. And next year, when I'm 71, I will be teaching 38 years. And when my mother passed, she taught for 38 years. And so I feel that my mother, her teachers, that line of hula, I think all of the family, I think that I have done those things to honor them. And most especially, I have come to know God without my mother. I used to think, Mom, can you call him and intercede for me? I figured she prayed really good and she could get it in there. But you know, when my mother died, I really learned what pule means, not only in life, but in hula. And so that's why next year is a very fulfilling year for me. And though we didn't celebrate in this 75th anniversary year, I hope to celebrate in a joyous manner that her memory is always cradled with love and held with aloha and sincerity in someone's heart. I want people to continue to love her.
So are you thinking now, Aloha moki hana,
That is the
Hula
song.
O Kauai.
Because you can only have one mokihana love affair at a time.
Absolutely right. Well, some people might try.
No, no, no. And you know what that mokihana love affair is? Because my mother had this, it was a skin condition called epidermis bullosa, which I inherited and which two of my brothers inherited. So we've saved about maybe 100 million people from it. And what it is the layers of skin are so thin. So the mokihana, when she would wear it, mailele or not, she would be blistered. And when people asked her what was that, she'd say, it was my mokihana love affair. So that's the mokihana love affair.
So wait. So I go to Kauai to do a hula presentation, and I'm given like 100 strands of mokihana. So I wear it, right?
Yes.
2 days later, I come back to Honolulu, and one morning I get up and I look in the mirror, and I am covered in welts. And I looked in the mirror and I said, oh no, God, cancer.
That was your mokihana love affair. That was not cancer.
I was like,
Now,
oh my God, what
when
just happened?
when the welts blister and erupt, the affair was intense.
Yeah, there we go. It was intense.
Yes, but that's not cancer.
I was like so scared. I was
Okay,
like,
now
oh
you
my
know.
God.
Now you know.
No, it's Mokihana Love Affair.
There you go.
So, will you perform that wonderful hula? Tell us a little about it. A little bit about it before we do it.
Okay, so you know she has 7 children. She has a fireman husband. There are no Disneyland trips. I mean, we saw Disney and we looked at the thing, but there's no Disneyland trips, never. And so she goes to Kauai, and she's a dancer that's going to arrive there. And that was when the plane, landed, and the people like, they just come out, give you the lei right there. So there was a bottle club, down at Navilivili, and not Mama Oi's now.
Yes.
Not Club Jetties. No,
Club Jetties.
this is like the bottle club. And you had to bring your own bottle. But they had Hawaiian music from Honolulu, Maiki Aiu, they had genealogy, they had everybody coming in. Well, so my mother says to the host and hostess, I'm going to write a song for you and your kindness to me. She didn't know that those people were her family. She just said like this, with a full heart, even though I'm leaving, I'm going to write a song for this wonderful time. Okay, and when people say that to you, as the recipient, you're like, oh my gosh, imagine, whether they do it or not, it doesn't matter because they said it.
Yep.
Okay, then she comes home, and my Auntie Kia, Teresa Malani.
Malani.
Okay,
Teresa
now
Malani.
her husband is Uncle Claude, who wrote Maori Brown Eyes. So my mother says to him, I want to write a song. And he says, oh, of course. And he goes, what kind of song? He said, a Hawaiian song. He goes, okay. And then she is like humming her little melody and telling him the whole thing. And so he's notating her little melody. And she says, and I want to say this and this. And he said, well, it's simply if you say aloha. And she said, yes, 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 yes. Because she was not a Hawaiian speaker, but she taught herself, along with the infusion of her teachers, to understand the beautiful poetry and to learn Hawaiian from that level down, not conversational up. And so Aloha Kauai is written, and Uncle Claude sends it off to Congress and puts it in the Library of Congress, and the sheet music comes back. And then Uncle Claude says, I'm going to call Mikilani to sing it. Mikilani who? Mikilani Fo. She's like the trio of the 25, cents 7-song box. And it's a moki, and it is a rocking song. And on the label, 49 state, it says, Margaret Aiu.
Fabulous.
And that is the Aloha Kauai. So later on, everybody on Kauai thinks it's their song, but it's really for Auntie Sarah's mother and father.
At the Bottle Club.
Yeah, and the Bottle Club at Papalina Hoa, right across from the park.
That is amazing. Well, my dear, I want to thank you, say mahalo anui loa, to Kumu Hula Coline Kaualoku Aiu.
Yes.
And thank you for spending this time with me and being one of the first people in this series of interviews called Ke'au o ka Mālamalama o ka Hula, bringing the enlightenment, the knowledge, wisdom of the hula tradition. And at this time, I would like to say a big mahalo nui to the administration and the staff of Windward Community College and the staff here at the Paliku Theater. There are many people that are making this possible. I want to thank our cousin, Kimo Adams, for the beautiful leis and the stage decorations. I want to thank myself.
Yes, and I'm going to thank you.
For bringing these
I am going
quilts.
to thank you with my lei.
Thank
You
you.
are. And I
Oh,
leave you
God
to
bless
Jaya.
you. And we're here because we love hula.
Aye.
And we want to see that in the future, hula is perpetuated.
Yes. Yes.
We have an opportunity today to bring the kupuna of the hula, who can bring the wisdom of their lives, their traditions, their genealogies, and their legacies, so that these stories will be here for the future, for our children, our grandchildren, and for the many generations to follow. And this is why we are here for Ke'au o ka Mālamalama o ka Hula. Thank you, everyone. Mahalo anui loa.
Mahalo. This is our book, Hula is Life, and it was written to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Halau Hula O Maiki. We are very excited on the 75th anniversary, hoping to publish Hula is Life Book 2. And in this book, it tells the story of Auntie Maiki, Maiki Aiu, not of Halau, but of her life through the hula. And so this is our book, and this is our logo. It has always been since the very beginning. The hula drum cradled by the maile, as the maile is representative of Laka, the goddess of hula, and of course the dance drum, the hula pahu, for the things that Auntie Maiki truly loved. Of all the hula, she loved the hula kahiko.
Kaholo. Aloha. Aloha. Moki hana. Kua o kaua I vili ia. Me ka maile lau li'i li'i. Maile li'i li'i he ui. nauna he aloha ia oe me a'u me oe i ka pu'uwai aloha no o Kauai luana ho'oki pamalihini puana kaulana ka inoa o Kauai ha'aheo he nani hiva hiva Kauai Kauai he nani no e ka owi Walava